Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a morning edition from the New York Times. Again, we are getting reports of the comfort view for the morning. Let's get into this, let's get into this, morning edition and, figure out what the morning report is that we have today. Furthermore, before we do begin, I just wanted to say I will be putting the links to the to some of the things that are in today's morning report in the video description below. Without further ado, let's get into it. The morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today is July 12th, 2025. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Rewatching old shows may seem like a waste of your time when there's so much culture to consume. But a repeat viewing offers its own unique rewards. Ladies and gentlemen, seen it all before. Everyone seems to be rewatching the prestige shows of the early 21st century latest. Yes, we are 1/4 of the way through the century. I don't know how to process that either. In case you all are wondering, you guys are not alone. I don't know how to process it either. Every week, I heard that someone else is working their way through the Sopranos. Consensus. It holds up. I have no fewer than 3 friends who are rewatching Mad Men. I can't believe we used to get shows like this. One mused, perhaps referring obliquely, obliquely, to the heaps of mid-TV watching up on our streaming shores these days. Don't even get me started, ladies and gentlemen, on the girls. Aficionados, AFICIONADOS, all rediscovering how droll and nostalgic and perfectly of its time it was. Why rewatch a show when we have so little time on Earth you may be asking yourself, ladies and gentlemen, why watch something you've already seen when there's nowhere near enough time to make it through all the Q's, Queues, and wish lists, and playlists, and recommendations dashed down in the Notes app? There's the quality factor, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not taking a risk on a flashy new show that could turn out to be a total snooze when I already know something older is good. Then there's the element of comfort. It's cozy to revisit characters that feel like friends, plots that that we can recall broadly, even if we can't exactly conjure the details. Nostalgia figures in. I remember watching The Sopranos in my first post-college apartment. The script reads, ladies and gentlemen, VHS on a 13-inch TV set that had a built-in VCR. I remember doing that too, ladies and gentlemen. Rewatching demands a different type of attention than a first watch does. You know what's going to happen, so you don't have to make sure you're clocking each turn of the story. You can focus on the stuff that might have escaped you on first view. The sets, the actors, tiniest gestures. You can wander around a scene without worrying you're going to lose the plot. I had the blissful experiences of rewatching Fleabag recently. It came out in the US in 2016, hardly a relic of an earlier era, but long enough ago that I was ready to immerse myself in its array. Heartbreaking, ultimately redeeming world. On first watch, ladies and gentlemen, I was so enchanted by the show's unconventional style. Phoebe Waller-Bridge as Fleabag regularly addresses the camera, breaking the fourth wall, that I paid less attention to the supporting characters, Olivia Colman and as Fleabag's deliciously passive-aggressive stepmother, Sienna Clifford, as her uptight sister. On the repeat viewing, I was able to appreciate these performances wholeheartedly. I was chatting with a friend about rewatching things, about how, despite the consultations of getting reacquainted with an old favorite, I can't help but feel like I'm wasting time that I should be spending on things I have seen yet. Haven't seen yet. Um, my friend pointed out that we go to museums and galleries to look at a painting that we love again and again without worrying that our time would be better spent on paintings we haven't seen. Why should TV be any different, ladies and gentlemen? Rewatching is its own cultural activity, not necessarily inferior or redundant. If it's pleasurable, soothing, enlightening, there's really no need to judge the practice any further. That said, Michael's colleague, Michael wrote about 30 shows to watch this summer, and I'll admit, I'm excited about a few of them. Long story short, an animated comedy from the minds behind BoJack Horseman and Too Much, Luna Dunham's new show about a Brooklyn woman, Megan Staltler of Hacks, who moves to London in hopes that her life will become a romantic comedy, look especially promising. Ladies and gentlemen, a compensations defense. United Health Group is one of the country's largest and most besieged healthcare companies. Federal investigators are looking into its business practices. Its stock prices has plunged over the past year, and in December, an assassin shot one of its executives in Manaman. David Enrich, Enrich, an investigative editor, explains in a news story how it is coping. From United Health's perspective, bad publicity is at the root of its woes, WOES. So the company is battling its critics, but its aggressive tactics, some say, are designed to shut down free speech. The company and its lawyers threatened to sue a Texas surgeon, Dr. Elizabeth Potter, who complained on TikTok that she had to leave surgery to respond to a United Health phone call about a patient's insurance coverage. She says that the company then cut off negotiations to designate her surgery center as an in-network option for the insurer's patients, though the insurer denies that. When the billionaire investor Bill Ackman shared Dr. Potter's video on X and urged investors to bet against the company, United Health complained to the Securities and Exchange Commission. United Health sued The Guardian last month for defamation as editors were about to publish a second investigation into the company. The news outlet postponed the piece and it still hasn't run. United Health's outside lawyers wrote to video streaming services including Amazon and Vimeo, to complain about a documentaries that was critical of a United Health subsidiary. Both platforms removed the film. A United Health spokesman defended the company's efforts. The truth matters, and there's a big difference between criticism and irresponsibility, omitting facts and context, he said in a statement. When others get it wrong, we have an obligation to our customers, employees, and other stakeholders to correct the record. Ladies and gentlemen, the latest news. The Trump regime. Ladies and gentlemen, Trump has moved deadlines, blown up negotiations, and tied his tariffs to unrelated negotiations and unrelated complaints. His trade agenda has lost any semblance of structure. Jenna Smialek, Smialek, writes, the State Department began firing nearly 1,400 workers as part of Secretary of State Marco Rubio's reorganization plan. As Trump reshapes the government, he has frequently put officials in charge of multiple agencies and offices at the same time, an approach that has little precedent. President. Trump regime officials are feuding with one another over how they handled the investigation into the disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get into the Texas floods. After a catastrophic flood raged central Texas, FEMA did not answer nearly 2/3 of calls to its disaster hotline, according to documents. Hint, hint, because of Donald Trump, the 34-time convicted felon. Reviewed by the Times, the agency had fired hundreds of contractors who operated its call centers in flooding hotspots around the country. Many Federal Weather Service positions also remain unstaffed. Experts say future forecasts and warnings could suffer. Campers watched the floodwaters sweep away cabins while people inside screamed for help. They recount what they saw last weekend. Hell of a situation, isn't it? Trump visited the Texas flood sites. Only because you, Trump, discontinued FEMA services. Because of that, ladies and gentlemen, the Texas governor, Greg Abbott, threw up his hands and said that there's nothing more that he could do. So, which means that, thankfully, firefighters from across the U.S.-Mexico border came to the rescue because of Trump's negligence. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get into immigration. A federal judge said the government can't make immigration arrests based on race or deny detainees access to lawyers. Tactics used during raids in Los Angeles. A frustrated federal judge signaled that she would prevent Kilmer Abrigo Garcia, the man once wrongfully sent to El Salvador, in violation of a 2019 immigration judge's court order barring his deportation to that specific country. Based on race, the man once wrongfully deported to and sent to El Salvador from being deported quickly. Again, might I add. Ladies and gentlemen, here are some more big stories. And before, ladies and gentlemen, we move on, I will have reporting coming up, most likely after this video is out, of the judge that barred the Trump regime and the ICE from making those arrests coming out. More than likely after this video is up. Other big stories, ladies and gentlemen. NATO countries plan to buy weapons from the United States and give them to Ukraine. Seconds before before an Air India flight crashed last month, the fuel was cut off to both engines of the plane, investigators said. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a reporting of that up. It is currently on the channel. If you guys cannot find it, there will be a link in the video description below with all my past legal breaking reporting videos. The finding appears to rule out mechanical failure, but raises questions about the pilot's actions. Hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers may lose food stamps benefits under Trump's new tax and spending law. Ladies and gentlemen, the week in culture. Film and TV. The new Superman movie is out, and as ever, Clark Kent's journalism ethics are murky. A critic liked the film. Like the leader of Lena Dunham's new show, two versions of Jane Austen, Austen, the reality was less dreamy. A reviewer, ladies and gentlemen, found too much to be surprisingly mild. Not as thorough or tricky as Girls, the show that turned Dunham into a star. Sex and the City is having a resurgence, and there's a secret ingredient: the contempt for its characters. An English language version of the Chinese animated movie Ni Zatu, Nezha, which is the highest grossing animated feature of all time, will be released in the US next month. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get into music. On her fourth album, Virgin, Lorde, Lorde, ponders the value of fame. Again, the week's podcast explores how the album figures into the Lorde, Lorde, lore, Lore. Listen here. The week's Amplifier newsletter looks back on Janet Jackson's most sensual songs. Ladies and gentlemen, more on culture. See inside Library 180, a nirvana of old magazines in Manhattan's financial district. The designer Glenn Martin's Martens', first show for Maison, Maison, Margiela, Margiela, was an exhilarating exhilarating multi-dimensional, occasionally misguided explosion of ideas, Vanessa Reedman writes. Valerie Gergiev, Gergiev, the Russian maestro, stunned the West for his support of Russia's leader. Vladimir Putin is set to appear at a festival in Italy this month. Ladies and gentlemen, everything the Times offers all in one subscription. Morning readers save an unlimited access to the Times with the introductory offer that will be down in the video description. Ladies and gentlemen, next, welcome back to the Weekender. This week, I got IGA Swatika, Swatik, Swiatek, a financial, finalist at Wimbledon, introduced tennis fans to her favorite meal, pasta with strawberries. That actually sounds really good. Not gonna lie. Fans gasped. A clip of her describing the beloved Polish dish went viral, so our cooking team gave us the recipe. Maybe you'd like to try it for yourself. We also spoke to actors from two of the summer's buzzy shows. Lena Dunham's new Netflix series, Too Much, and to HBO Max hit The Gilded Age, and whether you're a fan of superhero movies or not, don't miss the story of how the Dr. James Gunn created Superman's Fury sidekick Crypto. Critics recommend that you go out and see the new reboot too, though. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be all for the morning edition. Until my next morning edition, please look out for my next pickle breaking news reporting. And as I said earlier in the morning edition video, please look out for the judge's order barring the Trump regime and ICE from making racial discriminative arrests in California that was recently released.